Imagine a world where the villagers are only aware of the surface level water, but the villagers use their mechanical apparatus to create fences and to create walls and to create reservoirs. And they use their physical vessels to hoard and hide away and protect their surface level water. And villages here and there, whenever they fall into a shortage, they covet that water. They know how precious and valuable water is. So they go to war with one another over water. And they use the rope and the wood and the metal and the stone not to build mechanical apparatuses for wells, but they see the surface level water and say, let's go after that. So they make catapults and walls and crossbows and all sorts of apparatus of defense and offense, machines of war, machines that offensively assert their right to this surface level water and their right to define what it is and where it flows and how it flows and to whom it flows to, or to create reservoirs to hoard it and walls and bastions and fences to keep others away, to keep others out. And who knows, maybe even instead of making tea and beautiful tea ceremonies, they secretly and in clandestine ways, they go and they poison the water supply of their enemies. We don't have to imagine a world like that because we live in it. And occasionally someone will come along with this earthen vessel filled to the brim with water, and they freely and unconditionally give it to the village, wherever village they are. Maybe they go from village to village to village, and everywhere they go, they have this earthen vessel that no matter how much water they pour forth, they always seem to have a way to refill it. And it's the purest, clearest water. But the water barons can't have this because their power, their authority is based on their ability to control the water supply. And they cannot have a competing source of water, especially not one which is so crystal clear and pure, as opposed to their water, which has been fought over and recycled and reused and retreated over and over and over and over again. And let's face it, the law of entropy on the surface rules, and it doesn't matter how many times you recirculate and recycle and reuse and retreat the same water, it's never going to be the same as when it was first drawn from the spring. So those who are in charge of the water for the villages, they arrange to have this stranger with the infinite water supply shunned, exiled, or worse, killed. And the people never learn of the source of the well. They never learn the location of the well that the stranger had. And they do not care to learn the truth, that all they need to do is dig down deep into the earth beneath their feet and use all the stones and the wood and the rope and the metal, not for making machines of war, for shoring up their defenses and their offenses, but to stone the walls of that well and to build the apparatus and the pulley and use the rope to connect to the bucket that can lower down into the depths. They never learn to do that. So they fight over the surface level water that becomes ever more tainted, ever more putrefied because of the law of entropy, because it keeps getting reused and fought over and so on and so forth. And again, we don't have to imagine this. We live it. And all of those messengers who dug deep into the depths of their own hume and of their own earth to connect to that eternal flow of manas within themselves, divine mind, and lowered the bucket of their being and their presence of awareness through the tether of consciousness to their higher self, and then applied their rational minds and all of their mechanical faculties, and then used their physical vessel to put that water into form, into some usable form. Once that water reached the surface, the villagers and the water barons, those who saw the value of water and the value to control it and hoard it and defend it or steal it from others, to appropriate it, and all the other things that have happened to various different traditions, spiritual traditions specifically, over the years, and villages who ended up fighting over a common reservoir, and they had to split it down the middle because they had these schisms, more division. But all of that surface level division, all that surface level conflict is all a echo of the real division that separates the surface dwellers from the eternal source that can satisfy all thirst. And that is the practical, real, meaningful division that exists. That is the separation. That is what must be reconciled. To cease being a surface dweller, obsessed with the surface of things, with the literal interpretation of things, and the superficial, mechanical, physical level of reality, obsessed only with the physical vessels that we have and how much water is in our hoard. And then an entire cottage industry appears over how beautiful a vessel that they can create. And who has the most beautiful vessels, and who can glorify and make the most aesthetically appealing vessels of water. And people become obsessed over who has the nicest, the finest vessel, who has the strongest vessel, or the biggest vessel, or the most number of vessels, who has the finest earthenware, the finest ceramics, the most beautifully painted earthenware, or whose earthenware depicts this or that or the other theory about where the source of water actually is and where it comes from. All of that is exoteric. All of that is on the surface. All of that is mechanical. All of that is physical. That's all just one pillar. That's why in that one video we made about the bicycle, the triune human being, and how Hume and Manas and being are like the front wheel and the rear wheel of a bicycle, and the rider in the middle. And in that video series, we describe explicitly how this humanity is unicycling on one pillar, on the pillar of Hume, on the pillar of earth, the pillar of physicality alone, of mechanicity alone. And they're desperately trying to juggle all the concerns of their life atop this one wheel, on this one seat post of the unicycle. And they're desperately trying to maintain balance in all of this. It's like all those villagers fighting over the surface level water, and they're all dying of thirst. Except for the water barons and the uber wealthy ones and the hoarders, who they have enough water, but for everybody else, they're dying of thirst. They're kept waterless, or their water is rationed. They're kept more or less in the dark. And if only they were to apply their mechanical and physical faculties to the act of digging wells and stoning the walls and building the pulleys and lowering the bucket with consciousness, they could eliminate thirst and famine and war and all the other problems. In other words, if only they would realize that they are in Hume, as the physical vessel, they are where the rubber meets the road on that bicycle. In the world of traction, it is the rear wheel of the bicycle that gives the whole apparatus, the whole exercise motion in the real world where the rubber meets the road. But the power, the motivation for that rear wheel comes via the chain, the link to the pedals, to the crank, that chain, that connecting link, just like the rope, the tether that connects the apparatus to the bucket that can lower into the well. In the same way, it is the chain that connects the rear wheel to the will of the rider, the will of the being who turns that pedal, that willpower that motivates that rear wheel that must be in alignment with the rest of the bicycle, and specifically the front wheel. It is the front wheel which sets the direction that the rear wheel must travel. That is how a bicycle works. Those two wheels have to be in alignment, and that front wheel is Manas, the divine mind of being. And who steers that front wheel? Well, the rider, the being, the true self. This is the connection between these two allegories, but they're functionally the same. In order to ride a bicycle, to steer, to set the direction, and to have his willpower, his energy, his motivation reach the world of action, the world of traction, where the rubber meets the road, the manas of being requires the hume, requires that rear wheel. And it requires that that rear wheel be connected to the rest of the bicycle through that chain. Because we've all ridden a bicycle, we all know what happens when that chain falls off. You can pedal as hard as you want, you're going to fall over. And that connection, that link is consciousness, is that conscious link, that conscious connection. That's that rope that connects the apparatus to the bucket. If that rope breaks, then you get nothing. You can get nothing from the well if that rope is severed, just as the bicycle can't go anywhere if the chain falls off. The water deep in the well can no longer rise to the surface if that rope is cut, and the water remains useless down there in the well. And the rider can't go anywhere. The being can't accomplish anything. If the chain falls off the chain ring, he can pedal all he wants, but that rear wheel is going to stay motionless. So in both these analogies, there's one critical piece then, that's that link, that connection, that tether between the mechanical apparatus and the bucket, that link, that connection between the rear wheel and the rest of the bicycle. And that connection, that link, that is consciousness, our ability to consciously pay attention. And that's why it is emphasized so much in Buddhism and all other genuine spiritual traditions. To be present, to be awake, to be aware, to be paying attention, and to remember that your consciousness connects your mechanical apparatus and physical vessel to the source of all that you need to fulfill your destiny and to fill the cups of those who thirst for what only you can deliver to them. So in that sense, in the Torii Gate behind us, what connects those two pillars is the arch, the arc, the tether, the rope, the chain, the links, the ties that bind. That's that crossbar across the top of the Torii Gate that creates the gate, that creates the portal, that completes the well, that allows that which is on one side to cross over into the other and back again. Just like that well, it is the rope that allows the bucket to go down into the depths and come back to the surface. It is that crossbar connecting the two pillars that allows us to step from the exoteric into the esoteric and back again, and return back to the surface and bring forth and deliver that which we acquired on the other side, beyond the veil. In other words, pour forth our vision. As an aside, or perhaps a little punctuation point, the Hungarian word for water is víz, V-I-Z. The relationship between víz and vision. You might call that coincidence, but we call that providence. That here and now in this moment, the vision that we seek to reverse the division is all about digging a well and going down beyond the surface, down into the depths of our earth, to draw forth that water, that víz, from the eternal flow, from the eternal source within, and bring that víz, that vision, to the surface, and then use our physical vessel to share that víz, that water, that vision with the world. This relationship between vision and water had not been revealed to us until right now in this moment. So how's that for a punctuation point?